That's a good signal. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is Gary McLean, and I'm the hearing examiner for the city of North Bend. And I believe you're all here for purposes of participating or observing in a public hearing. This is regarding an application for a variance on a project brought by an engineering firm for a development firm for proposed buildings that are over in the city's far west end. And the process on a variance in the city is that the hearing has to happen before the hearing examiner. And I have to review everything and consider testimony and written evidence that's submitted and comments from people. And I'll issue a written decision. Written decisions of the hearing examiner are appealable under LUPA to King County Superior Court. Any decision will explain that. So just to let you know, if you want to get notice when a decision comes out or something like that, make sure that your email is on file with staff. Many people who have commented have already done that, so you're already on the record, but there are sign-up sheets in the back, I believe, on the table, so people can put their name in with their contact information, just so you know. So the process will follow today. I will ask the staff to summarize their staff report, any key issues that came up during their review process, and anything new that they have received by way of comments or information that might have come out since they issued the staff report. And then to recommend to me what their conditions or decision might be. Then I'll turn to the applicant team to respond to the staff presentation, and I should say to speak to the merits of their proposal. The burden of proof in this matter is on the applicant team, not staff. Staff doesn't have a dog in this fight, so to speak. It's on the applicant to prove that their request for a variance satisfies all approval criteria. After the applicant team has made their presentation, I will turn to members of the public who might be present here in the hearing room to offer your comments. You're welcome to raise questions during your comments, but that's not a question and answer session time. So what I mean is if person number 1, 2, and 3 have questions, all right, they're written down. And if the staff or the applicant team want to respond to those, I'll let them do that after all comments are received. So don't stand at the mic and expect that you ask how tall is it. They're not going to answer back and forth. That's not how it works. Lay your questions on the table as part of your public comment. If you brought written statements that you want to read into the record, it's always very helpful if you submit a hard copy of that or a PDF copy by email to staff so that that's part of the record, because I will take some notes and I will have an audio recording of the hearing, but it's always easier to read it if you already wrote it down. And if you typed it up and took the trouble to do that, you're welcome to submit your written comments as part of the record. Let's see. Everybody that'll be speaking today will do so under oath, and I will administer the oath one at a time when people are speaking. I just ask that people not interrupt one another, whether it's the applicant team or staff or members of the public. Everyone will have a chance to say their piece during this public hearing. One other thing I want to say is during public comments, everyone will have a chance to speak one time before people want to speak a second time. So everybody gets a bite at the apple before anybody else gets to go up a second time because they forgot to say something. Generally, I think people should be able to conclude their remarks within about 5 minutes apiece. I'll decide the time limit if one will apply before you start. But before we start, how many people think you might want to offer public comments during the hearing today? Just raise your hand. And if you don't raise your hand, you can decide you want to speak. And if you do, doesn't mean you have to. Anybody wish to offer public comments today? Just raise your hand. I want to gauge about how many people want to speak. Not seeing anybody? Okay, well, when I get to it, you can all change your mind and speak if you want to. All right. Let's see. What else did I want to say to you all? Written comments are received and they will be accepted into the record by the close of the hearing today, which was duly noticed to start here at 1 o'clock. So if you did bring written comments for you, yourself, a neighbor, anybody like that, make sure that you get to the microphone and submit it into the record before the hearing closes today. There is an audio recording that is being made of today's proceedings. So anytime you speak, please introduce yourself spell your name, and then move into what you want to say. And that's because if somebody needs to make a transcript of today's proceeding, it's always good to know who's talking and they know how to spell your name. So just think of it that way. And please don't speak over one another when you're recognized to speak, or if you're addressing a question from somebody. Speak one at a time and speak slowly enough where people can hear what you say. And if they need to listen to the recording, they can decipher what it is that you said weeks and months from now when we're all away from the room. Okay. All right. Are there any procedural issues that came up before today's hearing that I should be aware of to address before I start the hearing, substantive hearing? Ms. Burrell? From the city and the applicant team, are you aware who's the applicant's primary representative?
Hi, I'm Nancy Rogers with Karen Cross and Hempelman here today on behalf of the applicant, and
Okay.
don't have anything for you at this moment.
Good afternoon, Ms. Rogers. And to the staff team, is everyone present and accounted for and ready to proceed with the hearing that the staff team thought needed to be here today? Okay, and Ms. Rogers, on behalf of the applicant team, is your team ready to go?
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. All right, so with that, I will begin the public hearing. And Ms. Burrell, I recognize you from other hearings that we've had. And you were the author of the staff report, I believe. You may have had colleagues that helped you, but given that status, I will recognize you first and I'll put you under oath and you may proceed with your summary of the staff report and your recommendation. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. You may proceed and move the mic to you so you can be heard.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Jamie Burrell, Burrell. I'm a senior planner with the city of North Bend. Next to me is Jeff Gray. He is a managing senior scientist with OTAC, who will speak after me. He is the primary critical areas consultant that the city used for this project. So as our hearing examiner said, we are here today for the Mount Si Industrial Center wetland variance request for indirect wetland impacts and wetland buffer modifications to access the southern portion of the site. The project number is PLN 2022-0425. The developer is the Panattoni Development Company, and the project is located at 1307 Northwest 8th Street. That's tax parcel 082308 9001, 082308 9004, and 092308 9027. The land use designation map in the city's comprehensive plan identifies the site as Employment Park, which is a light industrial zone, and the zoning map identifies it as the same, Employment Park 1. Parcels surrounding the property are all zoned Employment Park 1. And the property abuts Northwest 8th Street to the north and I-90 right-of-way to the south. The site is currently vacant and was previously used for agriculture. And similar types of projects are in the vicinity, such as the Nintendo complex and the outlet mall. And the city is not, there's no ongoing code violations or environmental issues with any of those properties that we're aware of. So some history on the project. The pre-application conference was held June 2nd, 2022, and the city issued a letter to the applicant on July 13th, 2022. The application was received December 30th, 2022, and determined to be complete on January 23rd, 2023. The city then, on February 3rd, 2023, issued a notice of application that was mailed to properties within 300 feet and published in the Snoqualmie Valley Record, mailed to agencies and tribes, and posted on site with a public comment period through February 20th of 2023. At that time, the city received 3 comments. One was from the Snoqualmie tribe, which relates to the subject matter of today's hearing. One was from King County Roads Services Division relating to traffic impacts. And one was from Nintendo, also related to traffic assessment and mitigation. Those are provided in Exhibit 1. Comments on the original proposal included more than 6 acres of riparian and wetland buffer clearing and excavation for floodplain compliance, which have been removed with the current plan, and we'll go over that shortly. The variance request is for a wetland and buffer encroachment necessary to construct the southernmost building and provide a full build out for the applicant of approximately 350,000 square feet of building space. The city then proceeded with a SEPA State Environmental Policy Act determination of mitigated non-significance, and that was issued July 5th, 2024, and had a comment period through July 29th, 2024. The city received 4 comments during that time, and the determination and checklist and comments are all included in Exhibit 1 as well. The city did not receive any SEPA comments related specifically to this variance request. Conditions of the SEPA that I just wanted to note that are related to critical areas cover 5 items. First one is that a final mitigation plan will be submitted and approved for the impacts to the regulated wetlands and stream buffers prior to construction. That still needs to be completed. Number 2, we will require the applicant to submit a proof of a native growth protection easement and that has been recorded. And that will be recorded with the county auditor on the final development permits. Number 3, we will require the applicant to submit a critical area mitigation, performance assurance, and maintenance assurance bond prior to grading in any of the buffer mitigation areas. Number 4 is we will require the proposed mitigation area to be monitored for 10 years to ensure the critical habitat and restoration goals and objectives have been achieved. And number 5 is the applicant will need to secure a hydraulic project permit from Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and that's for the proposed culvert removal and new bridge over Gardner Creek, and they will submit that to the city prior to construction. So following SEPA, a site plan approval was granted to the project on July 31st, 2024, and that's included in Exhibit 2, administrative approval. The appeal period for the SEPA determination followed the city's land use decision, which was the site plan approval, and the city did not receive any appeals. The final site plan provided for a 21-day appeal period per our code. So pursuant to our code, this is a type 2 permit, and notice for this hearing was published August 9th, 2024. The applicant is requesting a variance to North Bend Municipal Code 1406.020 buffers and 1406.030 permitted alterations. And pursuant to those requirements listed in North Bend Municipal Code 1405.150, which is variance, and 1826. The applicant has provided a site plan and written analysis seeking the variance and conceptual mitigation plan to offset adverse impacts from the proposed variance and other project-related activities. That's included in Exhibit 4 and probably what we're mostly going to be going into detail here. I do want to enter the comments received since issuance of the staff report into the record. There are 8 comments in total. So do we want to call that Exhibit 8?
That's the next number available.
Yep.
So are these written comments received after staff report was issued?
Yes.
Okay. And you said how many were there?
There are 8.
8, and they're numbered
And
Exhibit
it's
8.
Exhibit 8. And then the other item to enter either as one or individual is a series of figures that I thought would be helpful at the hearing examiner's request. What we have is a zoning map. We have an aerial of the site, which includes some of the adjacent development. Third item is the proposed site plan impacts and mitigation from Soundview Consultants. Fourth item is a little more visual of the plant legend and mitigation proposal. We identify the Meadowbrook Sewer ULID, Utility Local Improvement District boundaries. That's it. So those are the figures we would like to enter as Exhibit 9.
You have copies that you've given to the applicant team.
Give you guys one, and I can make more.
And Mr. Examiner, if I may.
Ms. Rogers?
Could we identify each of these exhibits independently, either 9A, B, C, D, or
Mhm.
some other separate number, just for clarity?
That's fine. And did you, Ms. Burrell, did you put these all in the same order, the copies you had?
Yes.
Rogers?
Yep, I did.
So the top page will be A and the 9A, second will be 9B.
Yep.
And so you got one. How many do you have? 1, 2,
Mhm.
3, 4, 5, 6. A, B, C, D, E, F. Ending with F, is that what you got, Ms. Rogers?
Mhm.
Okay. My number to lettering isn't always good. I do know that J is 10. I don't know why I learned that as a kid. My education stopped there. Okay, 9A. And Ms. Burrell, do you have an extra copy in case members of the public are here where we could lay it on the table and if anybody wanted to look at it as it's being talked about today?
I can have one made, yeah. Yeah. And then should we provide copies of the packet of comments received? Or not?
The maps, I
Map.
think, because I think somebody might talk about the maps where things are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're able to pull things up on our screen as well.
And Ms. Burrell, the staff report and exhibit for the part of the record, those have been publicly available on the city's website, correct?
Yes.
That was yes, okay. And so you will update the website with PDF copies of materials that are submitted today, please?
Yes, we do not typically put all exhibits and attachments. If you would like me to, we could, or we can have,
These aren't real big,
okay,
so just a PDF,
okay.
Exhibit 9. And that way, if people want to access them, have access
Okay.
to them on the city's website. This
Okay.
project has its own page, right?
No.
You can, not yet? Okay.
It's not. It's identified in our development project map, but I'll have to look into if we could put it there. Where we typically put items like this would be under public notices. It's easily found off the main page.
So if they go to the department's main page and they click on something that says public
Public
notices,
notices.
and that will lead them to,
Too. We can
the
put a
exhibit.
compiled list of all the documents. Sure.
I'd appreciate it if you'd
Yeah.
do that.
Okay, so I think at this point, I would hand it over to Jeff to discuss in more detail the variance request we're here for today, the code analysis that we did, the impacts and mitigation measures.
Okay. And if you would please turn on your mic and introduce yourself and spell your name, please.
I'm Jeff Gregg, peer review consultant for the city. I'm a managing senior scientist for OTEC. And my name is spelled Jeffgray.
Mr. Gray, if you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, the floor is yours.
All right. I was gonna move this closer. I was gonna summarize the variance request and the process with the city code. North Bend Municipal Code 1406.030 is permitted alterations in wetland critical areas, including buffers, and it generally prohibits activities in wetlands and wetland buffers, but does allow some activities. Examples of allowed activities are like maintenance of an existing footprint, like a road, trails, stormwater management facilities, public roads and utilities. The application is for a new 2-lane bridge across Gardner Creek and the associated wetlands. The bridge will span Gardner Creek and the wetlands. But the bridge and approach road will be in the buffer. The buffer impacts will result in a permanent loss of wetland buffer and indirect impacts to wetlands. There will be additional buffer loss from the parking lots, I think on the southeast corner of the central building. And the reason for I guess the crossing is for the full build out that's been requested for the 350,000 square feet warehouse space that's necessary. Let's see. And as a result, the application includes compensatory wetland and buffer mitigation for those impacts. So an unpermitted alteration, there's a process under North Bend Municipal Code 14.05150 for the variance, which allows an applicant to request the variance from the code through the submittal of a variance site plan and written analysis. The applicant submitted the variance analysis to include and justify accessing the third building with the associated wetland impacts and wetland buffer impacts. The conceptual mitigation plan is included as Exhibit 4. And we, or the city, has reviewed it, the mitigation plan and the variance and written analysis for consistency with the city code, including the no net loss of critical area functions, which is key to the variance written analysis for the variance. Let's see. So to summarize, let's see here. Okay. So before getting to the impact, some of the minimization measures that had been identified in the written analysis include, as Jamie mentioned earlier, reducing the floodplain grading. That was on site, which reduced about 4 acres of temporary impacts. Relocating Gardner Creek Crossing in alternate locations were evaluated, as well as focusing the bulk of the development in the northeast corner of the parcel. So following those minimization measures, there will be approximately 32,901 square feet of indirect impacts to wetland A from encroachment within the buffer for the new road and the bridge over Gardner Creek and the parking lot. That includes a buffer averaging deficit of 4,129 square feet, 1,691 square feet of shading over the wetland for the new bridge. We call that habitat conversion. And 27,081 square feet of permanent buffer impact from reduction from the development. There's an additional 63,000 or so square feet of temporarily impacted buffer that will be restored following construction. The proposed mitigation, the offset, the project impacts to achieve that no net loss of critical area functions specific to wetlands and wetland buffers includes creating approximately 111,177 square feet of new wetland habitat along Gardner Creek and Stream Y, which the applicant team will, I think, explain further later. Project also includes enhancing 272,301 square feet of existing buffer. The previous land use north of Gardner Creek was an agricultural use as an orchard previously. And then the southern kind of corner is a little bit more forested, but has been logged previously. Just to kind of set the landscape, you can see from the pictures.
Mr. Gray, you finally answered a question without me asking it. Keep saying agricultural use occurred there. It was an orchard?
Orchard, yeah, agriculture is a loose term. So orchard, I think, is the previous.
I did a site visit today. Looks like a pasture. The trees have been cleared, the fruit trees or whatever was there before.
That, fruit trees are still there.
Oh, okay, I didn't see.
So they're embedded throughout the, kind of where the development is.
Okay,
Yes.
I was looking in from North Bend Way, looking south. They must be way down. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Let's see. Okay, and the applicant proposes enhancing an additional 28,342 square feet of added buffer. So buffer averaging, so wherever buffer can be added, they're gonna enhance those previously impacted buffers as well with native plants. And then again, lastly, restore the 63,000 or so square feet of temporarily impacted buffer. The mitigation also includes removing 2 culverts that have farm roads on them to access those areas previously that exist now, and those will be removed and the stream bed restored as part of the mitigation. And that's the summary of the variance request.
And Mr. Gray, do you want your written comments that you read from part of the record, or are they already? And if so, what exhibit number have they been assigned?
They are in the variance report. Yes.
What number?
Oh, I've not prepared written.
This is Jamie. We did not number the staff report.
Well, the staff report's a standalone exhibit, so he's reading the section of your staff report?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay.
I annotated it just to summarize.
Okay. And the staff report and all exhibits 1 through 7 added 8 and 9. I will accept those all into the record without objection from the applicant.
No objection. Is the staff report independently numbered somewhere?
No, I
No.
call it staff report
Perfect. Thank you.
because it's not an exhibit. Well, yep. Okay. All right. Anything else from the staff team?
Nope.
All right. And you reserve the right to respond to any comments or questions that might come forward during the course of the public hearing. And Ms. Rogers, because you're a member of the bar in the state of Washington and you understand that your ethical obligations require you to tell the truth. I don't put lawyers under oath unless you're going to be a fact witness separately, but I also understand you may not. And if you choose to call on other members of your applicant team, let me know and I'll put them under oath separately when and if they're needed. One thing I forgot to say is that to the applicant team during your presentation, speaking to the merits of your proposal, I would ask that at some point you put in your statement whether you all have reviewed the staff report, whether you accept the analysis in the staff report and the recommended conditions or findings that are included therein, or if you have exceptions, objections, or changes that you would like to see. And let me know that. So, Ms. Rogers, I'll turn to you.
All right, thank you and good afternoon to everyone who's present. Again, my name is Nancy Rogers. The first name is Nancy, last name is Rogers. I am a land use attorney at Karen Cross and Hempelman, and I am here today on behalf of the developer applicant, stated in the record as PDC Seattle LP 15BB/TH LLC, or commonly known as Panattoni, because that's much easier to say. With me today, immediately next to me is John Pickett with Soundview Consultants. He's our wetland expert, and he'll be talking after I give a presentation and overview to illuminate more about the site plan and the proposed conceptual mitigation plan. I also have with me David Goodsell with the Panattoni Company, and then immediately next to him, Dan Balmelli from Barkhausen. David is here in case we have specific questions for the developer itself. And Dan, of course, is here, Balmelli from Barkhausen, to address any questions that may arise regarding civil engineering and the site plan, flood issues, that sort of thing. We have covered much of my notes here already, so hang on just a second. All right, we are of course happy to answer the hearing examiner's questions, and should there be public testimony, we'll like an opportunity to rebut and respond to that testimony and answer those questions as well. We are here asking that you, Mr. Examiner, approve the variance as requested. We are in support of the staff report, including its recommended conditions. I'm going to provide a little bit of legal argument and project overview, again, followed by Mr. Pickett describing the mitigation plan. And first, I think you've already been largely oriented to the site plan that's on the screen right now, which is Exhibit 9. For the record, Exhibit 9D as in Delta. North is to the left on that site plan. That's where 8th Street is. I-90 is to the south. The Nintendo development and its existing structure is to the east. And up to the north across 8th Street are some lands that are also within the EP zone and targeted for development by others as described in the staff report. The western portion of this Mount Si Industrial Panattoni development property is not shown in many of the exhibits. It's not fully shown, including on Exhibit 9E that's in front of you and on the screen right now. And that's because it is largely constrained by steep slopes, erosion hazards, and wetlands. The overall site area is approximately is over 70 acres, but the portion that we're developing is just this narrow strip along the eastern edge of the property. If you turn to Exhibit 9B, you can see a better outline of the full site.
You said 9B as in boy?
9B as in boy, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, so there you can see the full 70.5 acres. And then superimposed on that property outline is an excerpt from the site plan that's found at Exhibit 5 in the record, showing the planned 3 buildings and also showing a chunk of the wetlands and creek area. And then further to the east, you can see the Nintendo development, which is labeled in the current building is labeled Nintendo. And immediately south of that is the outlet mall. North of the Nintendo building, you'll see a large amount of flat land. That is also part of Nintendo's property holding. And while they have not yet built on it, it is also included within the EP1 zone and could be built on in a similar fashion to their existing structure in the future. I don't have precise FAR calculations or setbacks or anything like that for you, but that currently vacant land to the north of the Nintendo building is available for future development and expansion of that Nintendo property.
And presumably that land is part of the proposed LID for any utility and road
I
extensions?
believe if we look at Exhibit 9,
The 2 last ones, I guess it's E and F.
E and F.
Yeah, it breaks up the LID map into 2 halves, pretty much the top and bottom half, right? I
Yes.
see figure 4.3 and figure 4.4. Okay. Yes, and I
Yes.
see EP1 would be current Nintendo, and then is the parcel immediately north of that that abuts northwest 8th. Is that the one that is?
That's shaded and in the Meadowbrook ULID boundary. And I guess we could ask Ms. Burrell to verify.
Sure.
Her map.
But
Yeah.
thank you for these maps because this helps a lot to orient where things are placed. And yeah, you talk. All right. One quick question, Ms. Rogers. The 70-acre site shown on Exhibit 9B as in boy. This would all be, the land's not being short platted or no boundary line adjustment is proposed, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, there is no boundary line adjustment being proposed and no subdivision.
And is any dedication instrument part of setting aside the remainder that is not being proposed for development at this time?
Could I think I'll direct that to Mr. Balmelli.
Because you
I do
spoke
not know the
to,
answer.
it's really hard to build on. It's
Yes.
got all this other stuff in it, and I'm paraphrasing.
Correct.
Who would like to speak?
Yep. Good afternoon, Mr. Hearing Examiner. My name is Dan Volmelli. I'm a principal with Barghausen Consulting Engineers. And our firm has been doing the civil engineering and the permitting for this project. So as part of this project, there will
Can
be,
you spell your name?
yeah, DAN, last name B is in boy, AL, M is in man, ELLI.
And Mr. Bomelli, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So as part of the project, there will be a boundary line adjustment for the project to realign the lots so that there's no lot lines within the building areas. That will be processing. In addition to that, there'll be either tracks or NGPEs that are provided over the wetlands and the streams and the buffers.
And you just used an acronym that I understand, but other people listening may not know what you just said.
Okay.
Can you tell us what you meant to say?
The NGPE stands for Native Growth Protection Easement.
Mhm.
And that's an easement and a document that gets recorded on title that ensures that there's no impacts or development that occurs on the remaining wetlands, streams, and buffers. That'll be accomplished as part of the development. There may be, as part of that boundary line adjustment, also a little bit of reorientation of the property on the west side to put it into a separate parcel also. So that hasn't been done yet, but it will be done as part of the next phase of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Bomelli. Mr. Rogers, you may continue.
Great, thank you. So again, as you've heard, we are planning 3 buildings, 2 to the north and 1 that requires the bridge crossing over Gardner Creek to the south. And the project work that triggers that variance is in fact that new bridge crossing of the wetland and stream complex, so as to provide access to that southeast corner. And I think Mr. Pickett will touch on this a little bit more, but there is no alternative option to access the southern portion of the site in order to provide some other way to build out that southernmost building. Again, as I said at the opening, we are here in support of the staff reports analysis and proposed conditions. We're here in support of the analysis that's found in Exhibit 4, the Soundview Conceptual Mitigation Plan. And I just wanted to build on a few of the variance criteria themselves, which match the typical variance criteria we see in local codes throughout the state of Washington. In particular, I wanted to note the criterion that calls for analysis of whether the variance is necessary due to special circumstances or conditions relating to the size, shape, topography, critical areas, location, or surroundings of the subject property, so as to provide this property with those relative rights and privileges permitted to other properties in the vicinity and in the zone in which the subject property is located. Similar to that criterion, because there is a lot of overlap in my mind between the various variance criterion, is the criterion that calls for ensuring the variance not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with limitations on the use of other properties similarly affected. So big picture, we're looking at whether or not this variance, if approved, provides this property with the right to develop similar to its neighbors. And in that vein, I again turn your attention to Exhibit 9B, showing the Panattoni Mount Si industrial site adjacent to the Nintendo site, and the amount of development that already exists on the Nintendo site, together with the potential for that Nintendo site to build out further to the north, additional structures unconstrained by steep slopes or wetlands, as compared to the very narrow band of development ability on the Mount Si industrial Panattoni site. in the, cases of Martell versus City of Vancouver, probably the seminal case on variances in this circumstance, special circumstances and practical difficulties must relate to the land itself and not to the owner or applicant. And here, that is exactly what we are dealing with. This is a highly constrained 70-acre parcel of land. Granting the variance allows us access to the southernmost portion of the land that is upland and can be built on if only we could get there. So this is the only way we can get there, is to cross Gardner Creek and build that road. I do acknowledge there's been public comments about this, and there are various statements in Exhibit 4 and elsewhere talking about the financial feasibility and the fact that Panattoni contends that building only the northern two buildings and not building the southern one is not financially feasible. I want to be clear that while those statements are there, not as though financial feasibility is a variance criterion for you, but rather to explain that and ensure that everybody is aware that with the development, including this third building, the stream crossing and the third building, we will be able to provide significant improvements to this degraded agricultural site in terms of new wetlands, significant buffer enhancements, all of the types of work that Mr. Pickett is going to describe to you and describe the degraded condition of the photos, et cetera. Whereas if we are unable to have the variance approved and we do not have that bridge, Panattoni is not going to develop just the northern two buildings. So as an alternative site plan, it's simply not going to work for them and they would not develop the property. That is not to say that's a variance criterion. And I want to be clear that you understand that we understand the difference between those things. Instead, again, this property is a substantial portion of the city's EP1 zoned lands on the western side of the site, which you can see in Exhibit 9A. And again, unique in its significant impingement by those critical areas, steep slopes and erosion hazards. The EP1 zone lands there are capable of being developed at a base 0.75 FAR. And here I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent into the city's code, so bear with me. FAR, I discovered, I talked with Jamie about this, there's a conflict in the city of North Bend's code. FAR is defined in the code itself at section 18.06.030 F as in Frank 4 as the gross building floor area divided by the net on-site land area. However, for an industrial development under North Bend Municipal Code 18.34.070, any industrial development must meet the commercial mixed-use industrial design standards and guidelines. And those standards and guidelines calculate FAR using the gross on-site land area. In this particular case, whether you use gross on-site land area or net, given the sheer size of the property and the amount of critical areas, the proposal that Panattoni has presented is well below an FAR of 0.75, well below. And I think for that reason, there wasn't any detailed analysis conducted by the city of that FAR issue. I wanted to bring it to your attention, Mr. Examiner, because I think it's important when you are looking at the unique circumstances of this land and the variance criterion calling for allowing this land to be given the same relative rights and privileges as other properties in the vicinity, to note that with this third building, we naturally increase the FAR of the potential development, and increasing the FAR of the potential development gets us closer to the city's base FAR adopted in its code for the entire EP1 zone of 0.75. So approving the variance does in fact get us that third building and gets us, the community as a whole, closer to the code adopted base FAR of 0.75 for this property. The additional variance criterion that are touched on, particularly in the public comments, are no material detriment to neighbors, ensuring that enforcement of the code, if creates an undue hardship on the developer, then a variance can be granted. And again, I want to turn to the argument that here we really are looking at making sure that this property, this 70.46 acres, is allowed the same rights and privileges as its neighbors. And the only way to do that, to get even remotely close, is to allow this stream crossing in order to access the southern portion and be able to build a building there. With that, I think I will like to turn it over to Mr. Pickett to describe his professional background, experience, his role with this project, and also to help walk you through the site plan and the impacts and mitigation.
Ms. Rogers, I'm going to throw the question to you, and if you want somebody else to answer, and if you'd like to reserve a response till you all get to huddle. But one of the issues raised in some public comments, and you touched upon it lightly, about alternate site plans, other things you could do to not ask for the variance. I just wonder, because the buildings that are proposed appear to be building uses of a certain type that warehousing or storage, or I don't know. I mean, people could do all sorts of things in this space, but I'm familiar in other jurisdictions where, and you are too, where projects such as this now are doing the unthinkable. They're stacking because there's not much more room in an urban area, particularly in cities. Was stacking the square footage that would be provided in building 3 considered as part of incorporating it in a taller building 1 or 2, or some kind of redesign there so that the south end would never have to be touched, a bridge would not be needed, but the net square footage provided to potential tenants or purchase buyers would be roughly equivalent? I don't know.
I will have to huddle with my team and we'll respond to that. Unless I think we should huddle because you're both looking at your notes.
Nope,
there.
that's fine. No.
Thanks. We'll talk in a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. My name is John Pickett, JONPICKETT, and I'm a principal consultant at Soundview Consultants.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Our office did the environmental permitting and consulting on this for the wetland streams, as well as the tree assessment for the site. We provided the wetland delineation and assessment report, as well as the conceptual mitigation plan. We also provided separately the tree retention plan. The reason we're here is for the request of the variance across the stream buffer areas. I'll try not to be redundant in my statements because I know a lot of the people in front of me had provided specifics in terms of the numbers for the restoration, as well as some of the other impact analysis. The City of North Bend's code does not allow buffer encroachment beyond the standard provisions within the code. So in order for a private access road to access the southern portion of the site, where it is unencumbered with critical areas such as wetlands and streams, a variance is a necessary mechanism for the applicant to access that site. There's no other way to access the southern portion of the site because it is confined. So stream crossing is necessary. It's important to note that no direct impacts such as stream fill or wetland fill are proposed for the access. The applicant proposes to span the entire crossing, which would be abutments on each side of the ordinary high water, as well as the delineated wetland boundary. The impacts will be assessed using indirect wetland impacts, which is Ecology's preferred methodology when you're going beyond the code allowed buffer impacts. We're providing mitigation for the indirect impacts at a greater than 3:1 ratio, which the required ratio would only be a 1.5 to 1. The way that the indirect wetland impacts are calculated normally would be half of the standard ratio. since the wetland's a category 2 wetland, it would be at a 3-to-1. But which we're providing greater than a 3-to-1 for direct impacts, and at indirect impacts, it should be at a 1.5-to-1. In addition to the mitigation that's being proposed for the indirect wetland impacts and buffer impacts, the project will be removing the 2 existing culverts. In addition, the stream areas will be daylighted out. What this means is we're going to be removing the farm access roads within the buffer area, as well as within the wetland and the stream areas, to provide the natural stream sinuosity within these areas. This will help re-engage the stream channel within the floodplain that it's currently disconnected within the specific areas. In addition, we're going to be providing, as it's been discussed earlier, buffer enhancement within the buffer areas between the critical areas and the proposed development, as well as buffer addition in the forms of buffer creation to offset the buffer reduction averaging areas. And any temporary impacts will be fully restored. Through these mechanisms, there should be a net gain, in ecological function over the existing baseline conditions on site. I'm happy to answer any specific questions in terms of the forms of impacts or mitigation.
Thank you. Anything else from the applicant team? You reserve to respond to any comments.
Yep, reserve that and also to answer your question
Oh, yeah.
earlier.
I understand. Let's see. And if we need to take a break for people to confer with one another at some point, let me know. It's true. Okay. All right. So that concludes the initial presentation by staff and the applicant team. And now, as I explained, I will turn to any members of the public or interested parties who might be here in the room who want to offer comments or ask questions about the project. So raise your hand if you'd like to offer any comment. Anybody? I see somebody in the back with their hand up. So if you want to come forward, and I should say, if somebody brought written comments that they want to submit as well, please come forward to do that, and I'll put you under oath and we'll accept your written comment too, if that's what you want to do. So if somebody wants to speak, come forward to the microphone and introduce yourself, and I'll put you under oath. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up. I'm looking into the light and he was behind you and I saw his, but not yours. Yeah. All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Logan. I'm going to spell it.
Yes, ma'am.
DEBBIELOGAN.
Ms. Logan, you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
So I actually just have a couple of questions. So the buildings, are these all industrial buildings? What are these buildings for?
Okay. Anything else?
And I'd also like to know, is this going to be housing? Is there going to be housing on it and apartments and just keep adding and adding and adding?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Logan. All right. Anybody else want to provide comments or questions? Gentleman in the back had his hand up first. Ma'am, I'll call on you next. Okay. Good afternoon.
Hello, I'm Michael Roth from the Snoqualmie tribe. I had a few questions.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I so do.
Okay. And again, could you state your name and spell it for the record?
Michael Ross, common spelling, last name ROSS.
Okay, Mr. Ross.
Great. Real quick to Soundview, you were talking about how the net ecological function will be increased. First of all, how do you determine that? What are the metrics and methodology? And then also how, I guess, what's the baseline currently that you're comparing to? How degraded is it? You had mentioned that it is degraded, and there was going to be some pictures. I guess these are the pictures. Wasn't able to really follow all of the other maps that were talked about or referenced.
Are Staff, did you all put copy of the illustrations that are part of Exhibit 9A through F on the table in the back? You're welcome to thumb through those. That's Exhibits 9A through F. They're on the table.
Oh, okay. Sorry, when I came in, I didn't see that.
I can't hear you.
When I came in, I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
What?
When I came in, I didn't see that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. The culverts being removed, and daylighted, they're gonna be replaced with, I'm assuming a bridge and then having a buffer on each side. Is that correct, Art? The other concern I had was, Panettone, am I saying that correct?
That's correct.
Close enough. Okay. You didn't actually answer the question about economical feasibility and why that you needed the square footage. I think you referenced some of the code requirements, but you didn't actually say like what was the reason that you needed to financially build all three buildings, including the third one with the stream crossing. That's something we had talked about in our comment letter from the tribe, and we would love to hear a response to that. The other thing we're a little concerned about with, I don't know if it's Soundview managing this, but the 10-year monitoring plan. This does seem like a very complex mitigation plan. And we would hope there's a performance bond put up by the applicant that is sizable and significant enough in case the mitigation plan is not successful or the goals or metrics aren't met over the next 10 years. That was it.
Mr. Ross, did you have a title you wanted me to have?
Yeah, Government Affairs Coordinator.
Okay.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you for coming today. And ma'am, right here in the front row. Right.
Hi,
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please introduce yourself and spell your name.
Hi, my name is Jody Little, Jodylittle. And I just had a couple of questions that are more project related, not so much towards the wetlands. So not sure if they're appropriate at this time, but I'll give them to you anyway. So question number one is, I'm curious about whether any traffic studies have been done for access from Northwest 8th Street into this property. And then secondly, if there's been any consideration to perhaps another entrance into this property from the south side, which would be by I-90 or from the Outlet Mall area. Because if I understand correctly, there's just one entrance in and out of here, which would be from Northwest 8th Street at this point. So those are my two questions.
Thank you very much. And did I see a hand over here on my right? You what? You absolutely can. Would you step to the mic and introduce yourself, and I'll put you under oath?
Hi, I'm Ann Davidson.
Ms. Davidson, do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And did you have something?
I do. I just want to submit some written comments.
And you wrote these yourself?
I did.
And they are your written comments?
Yeah.
All right, I will accept them into the record. And we should add those as part of exhibit number 8. And Ms. Burrell, if you want to assign them 8A through whatever when you have a final copy, okay? Okay. Last call for anybody who wants to make any comments. If you haven't talked yet, raise your hand. Somebody's behind the podium. I don't see him, but I don't see a hand either. And so I told everybody, don't let anybody go twice unless everybody's gone once. All right. So Mr. Ross, you had your hand up and I think you wanted to say something else. So come forward. You remain under oath.
Yeah, there was one question I had forgotten about. The last one was in this sense of mitigation sequencing. What did Panettone approach Nintendo for the north and lot that they own that's like a green side that's very flat, that's outside of a lot of the wetland buffers and isn't as hard to build on and probably, I don't know for sure, wouldn't require as much of a variance. That was it. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing. And now I will turn to the applicant and staff team to respond to any comments or questions as you see fit. Ms. Rogers, I'll let the applicant team go first.
The answer to your question, Mr. Examiner, about stacked warehouses,
About what?
about the ability to stack a
Stacking?
warehouse
Uh-huh.
was actually very easy, and I feel silly for not immediately knowing it. But the height limit is only 35 feet. You can't build a stacked warehouse with a 35-foot height limit. It's not tall enough because you need enough clear space inside.
So a variance would have had to be requested for a taller building. If you wanted to build a 80-foot building, I just made the number up.
I suppose that I don't know if a variance is available under the city of North Bend's code.
Ms.
for
Burrell, you
additional
can
height,
address
but-
that when the staff talks, but
theoretically, but the other issue is, while there is one of those in the greater Seattle area, they're not very common, because they are very difficult to sustain, financially, just operationally, much more expensive.
Mhm.
Not a typical product you would expect to see in this area.
Mhm.
In terms of the question about industrial uses, yes, these are intended to be industrial warehouse uses or light industrial manufacturing. We don't yet have tenants there. This is a speculative project. No specific tenant is lined up at the moment, so that could go either way. In terms of residential, these are again industrial buildings and not residential buildings. I'm going to turn over a few of these questions to Soundview, but I'll answer the ones that I can respond to. Mr. Ross from the Snoqualmie tribe asked again about essentially the financial driver for the third building. My point in bringing that up here today was to clarify that is not one of the variance criteria. In fact, financial feasibility is expressly not part of the city's variance criteria. And so that's why I was bringing that up, just because it is discussed in the various reports, but it is not actually the subject that is in front of the examiner today. And then there's a question about a traffic study. I believe that a traffic study was conducted and incorporated into the SEPA review, and Ms. Burrell might want to verify that for me. And then the question was brought up about potentially seeking an entrance from the south rather than building the bridge across Gardner Creek. Mr. Pickett touched on this in his earlier testimony. He can talk more about it, I think, but that access is also constrained from the south. So if you were trying to get it from the south, you'd have to do the same thing. Excuse me, just in a different location, as I understand it.
and I-90 is a controlled access interstate highway
And I-90 is absolutely a controlled access interstate highway, yes.
requiring approval by state and federal transportation agencies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is, for sure. Excuse me. And then I guess the last question was about whether or not we approached Nintendo about using their property. Again, we're here for a permit application on this particular property. And so I don't think whether or not Nintendo was interested in that is not again, on the table or in front of the examiner.
And Ms. Rogers, the variance criteria pertains to the property in the four corners that the applicant owns, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Rogers, I didn't ask, but you provided some legal background information. Did you want to submit anything in writing after close the hearing regarding any of the information you provided?
I'm sorry.
No,
Give me
that's
just
okay.
a moment.
Swallow your water. Did you want Mr. Pickett to speak? Because I could turn to him and let him move forward and then you can decide. Go ahead, Mr. Pickett.
Thank you. I'll speak to Mr. Ross's comments, and there were good questions, and I should elaborate more on the current existing baseline conditions. If we look at the exhibit that's illustrated on the screen, kind of going from which would be counterclockwise, excuse me, from the left to the right, there's a photograph of the existing buffer conditions. That's the wetland sea buffer area.
And Mr. Pickett, just so everybody knows, and if somebody wants to look at a hard copy, you're looking at Exhibit 9D as in David.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
They're back in that back table for anybody. It's hard to see the screen. I don't think it is.
Yeah, and so what we're looking at there is a photograph of the buffer area that has little native vegetation or very much screening to the wetland area. The grasses do provide some level of water quality function. However, in terms of buffer function and habitat function, it's fairly limited on site. Going down below that photograph is a photograph of the culvert and access road in between wetland B and wetland C. This is a farm access road. It's not a two-lane highway. However, it does provide an interruptive function from the stream channel, from the upgradient down to the downgradient, as well as the wetland function. Through the proposed project, this culvert and access area will be removed and allow the stream channel to be daylighted out. Moving counterclockwise again is another photograph of the wetland sea buffer area. There are trees and shrubs, vegetation in this area. But it does show that it's predominantly invasive species, focusing on reed canary grass and Himalayan blackberry. Moving again counterclockwise is another photograph of the buffer conditions showing invasive species such as Himalayan blackberry overhanging the stream channel. The next photograph, moving counterclockwise, is the second culvert that's proposed to be removed, just to the west of the proposed spanning bridge crossing. And it's a farm access road crossing the stream channel to the south. That culvert, as well as the access road, would be removed. And then finally, the furthest counterclockwise photograph, which would be at your 3 o'clock, is a photograph of Himalayan blackberries that are essentially spanning over the stream channel. We use the existing conditions on site, which is predominantly invasive species. There's existing infrastructure in the stream channel as well as in the stream buffer area to kind of set the baseline conditions. And we're proposing to fully restore all these areas, remove the improvements, and plant with a diverse native planting palette. So that's kind of how we got to the overall lift and ecological function of the stream channel. The next question was regarding, is it going to be a culvert or a bridge? We're proposing a bridge crossing that will entirely span the stream channel as well as the wetland area. So there'll be no direct wetland impacts to be proposed. We'll design it to WHW Stream SIMBS guidance.
Well, it's not part of my decision-making criteria. I did receive a lot of public comment about this is all about the developer making money to that effect. I'm going to ask you or one of your colleagues, basically the cost delta between if you were to just put in a culvert at this position or build a bridge that actually spans the creek. What's the cost difference there? Rough proportionality.
Mr. Balmelli, do you have an estimate for that?
Yeah, Dan Balmelli again. During the preliminary design phase, we did look at both options, working with John Pickett on the box culvert option, and also Panattoni and their construction team. The bridge was the preferred option because it had less impacts, and so we concentrated on that option more because we wanted to eliminate or minimize the impacts, and that was the direction. And I'm trying to recollect what the estimated difference in the cost was. I believe that the bridge option was more costly because it was a greater span, more expensive than the culvert option, but Panattoni proceeded with the bridge option mostly because of the reduction in the impact. So that was the direction there that I can recall.
And I'll just take public notice that Sound Transit's project that's under construction now, where they had to span hundreds of feet where they thought they could put footings originally, the cost was just enormously more expensive to fund a full span over a void than stay on the ground, so to speak.
Right.
Is that your understanding based on your professional experience?
Yes, this is a much, smaller span.
Yep.
And I mean, if it was determined that the span had to be doubled or something, yes, the cost of that would go up exponentially. But based on the soil conditions, what we've looked at, the current preliminary design, and we got some preliminary design information from the bridge manufacturer on this one. It was determined that it could be feasibly done for about this footprint and still make the project work. The culvert option obviously is a smaller span. I believe it would be a bottomless culvert, box culvert, which we've used on other projects working with Soundview and others. Less costly, but we also picked a location on the stream where the width of it was about as minimal as possible so that we could reduce that span also. So again, we tried to keep the cost down, but this one was really driven a lot by minimizing impacts, and that's how we got to the proposed design.
Okay.
And then to touch on the last comment or question from Mr. Ross was regarding the maintenance and monitoring. The mitigation area will be monitored for a 10-year period. There will be a performance bond as well as a construction bond that will be associated with that to offset any failures within that area.
Ms. Rogers and Ms. Burrell, I thought it might come up in the public, but it didn't. But one of the written comments that is now included as part of Exhibit 8 is a written letter that was transmitted somehow to received by the city yesterday from the Snoqualmie tribe. And essentially it raises the issue, a formal request for consultation on the matter. And then I have a written response from the city, signed by Mr. Rigos. And that is part of the record. So on that subject, one of the topics generally alluded to had to do with the recommended condition that if the city's sewer system improvements that are believed to be in progress, and I should say under design and moving forward, again, no one knows what's going to happen in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, but that's the understanding that staff has at this point. The applicant in this matter has asked if it's not done by a certain time and the buildings are completed, would they be able to put in a temporary septic type system with standing tanks and things of that sort on the site. And some of the comments received were, oh my goodness, why would you do that? I'm paraphrasing, but I picked up on the sentiments there. So I asked the applicant, why on earth would you want to do that? Can't you wait? Is it possible to remove that condition and move forward with the project? And one other thing has to do with the cost of it all. Isn't the LID supposed to help, distribute the cost? And in doing that, doesn't it behoove the applicant to wait until the LID is in place for obvious financial reasons? Why would they build before the sewer system's certain and ready to go? Because you may have a project that can't be served. So I'm scratching my head on that. I've never seen that type of request come forward.
Well, I can have Mr. Goodsell describe the rationale for that. Broadly, I think it's because if we actually ended up in a place where we had the warehouse leased to a tenant and something happened and there was last minute delays in the city sewer connection, but we needed to get the tenant in the lease, we wanted an option to be able to do that. But I think Mr. Goodsell, you can probably explain in greater detail.
Absolutely. Happy to.
And you haven't spoken yet.
No, I have not yet.
Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please introduce yourself and spell your name.
David Goodsell, David, last name Goodsell. At the time when we were discussing this with the city, there was not a concrete timeline as to when the sewer system would be completed. And there was concern on our part moving forward with the development timing, because we were about 2 years out at the time we were looking at the completion of the Meadowbrook sewer ULID. If we had completed our buildings, we didn't want to have buildings completed and waiting for sewer access. So there was a timing bridge that we wanted, a timing gap we wanted to bridge. And so the request was that if we had a tenant ready, willing, and able to occupy one of our buildings, that we could put in a temporary system, more of a storage bank, not a septic system, where if we had to deal with sewage for a period of 6 months until the sewer system was completed, that we would put that in and then we would remove it when we were done. The type of use we have here,
The type of what?
the type of use for the industrial buildings doesn't produce the sewage that say a retail center would produce. Or
No one's going to be producing wine, crushing grapes, no agricultural sewage.
we're not
Add-ons
anticipating that.
required.
No, that for a temporary sewer system, temporary storage system that we could utilize for a short period of time if necessary. This point, it doesn't seem likely at all, but that is going to occur. The timing of our development has been pushed back by
And I'll
a
note
year.
for the record that your report on the mitigation plan was revised October of 23. It was initially dated December of 22.
Correct.
So I'm just reading into it. You've been working on this project in some fashion for several years.
Correct.
So here we are today.
Exactly. And at this point, the timing of construction would time up well with the completion of the Meadowbrook sewer project. And it's highly unlikely that we'll need to use that, but wanted to have it as a backup just in case.
Could you live without it?
Hopefully, yes, we could hopefully live without it. Absolutely.
Because I mean, the public interest is part of this. And part of the public interest is that your project is genuinely served by a fully functional, safe, healthy sewer system.
We would never put that in if that was the case.
Yeah, I understand. But I'm saying, it seems having that backfall gives both sides a bit of ability to slow down, whereas the incentive is on you to ride the city hard to get it done. And if the city wants you to open your doors, it seems they would have to work hard to get it done in a timely manner.
Correct.
Whereas my concern, and I think some of the comments were, well, who's to say it doesn't stay longer than everybody thought? And I'm talking about the temporary
I understand.
equipment. And I'm not making a decision on it. I'm just saying that that's just one thing I saw that was a sticking point for substantial, for some people and organizations, that if it was off the table, it would seem that, Okay. Ms. Rogers, anything else from your side? And did I?
I did want to respond when I was having my coughing attack there earlier.
That's fine. You can cover anything you like.
I would appreciate the opportunity to submit a short closing post-hearing brief written argument in support of the variance, just like a week of time, I think. Well, actually, is there Labor Day in there?
You've got Labor Day coming up, so let's look at the holiday. Today. Would you like to submit it on a Monday or a Friday?
Oh,
Because I'm looking, Labor Day, of course, is the next thing. So the 6th or the 9th?
I think Friday the 6th is the
Okay.
best. Let's not ruin everybody's weekends, or at least people in my office's weekend.
So I will grant your request to submit a closing statement about supporting the application by September the 6th. And just transmit a copy to Ms. Burrell by email and PDF form. And I'll accept it as part of the record. And Ms. Burrell, you haven't even responded yet, but you reserve, I'll grant the city an opportunity if there's anything in that statement that staff feels they need to respond to, you can. Just let me know on the 6th or soon thereafter what you might want to, I'm just making it up, but if they say something about transportation, you may need to confer with your transportation consultant to verify it or to modify it. Okay. All right. Ms. Rogers, does that conclude the applicant's presentation and response? Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Because you bear the burden of proof, you get another bite at the apple in the sense that after staff responds, you get the last word. Okay. All right. Ms. Burrell, on behalf of staff, how would you all like to respond?
Okay, thank you. So responses related to some of the comments briefly. The applicant addressed the use question. Housing and apartments are not included in this proposal. Variety of different uses could occur within the buildings. We do limit warehousing to 80% of the buildings, and warehousing is defined in our code as over 65% of that space is used for storage. So as from the city's perspective, we do want to see employment. We want to see people, jobs, some level of activity, not just storage. We already addressed the performance bond question. The city has asked Nintendo before if they have any intention to develop the rest of their land. It wasn't really the subject of today, but they haven't indicated that they have a desire to. So they are currently happy with their open space over there. As far as traffic studies, there are a number of findings in the SEPA checklist, the mitigation measures, which are included as Exhibit 1. And there was a traffic impact analysis completed, a couple iterations of that, and that's been reviewed by the city's traffic consultant as well. There are a number of mitigation measures. There are offsite impacts. There are transportation fees.
Impact fees, right?
Impact fees, substantial impact fees that will be due. And
Would you touch upon 2 or 3 of the offsite or frontage improvements
Yes.
that are part of this project?
So
And if you want to turn to an exhibit to show where they would be, so people have an understanding.
yeah, so the certificate of concurrency is also mentioned in the exhibit list as Exhibit 6. That details really well the transportation mitigation. We have Northwest 8th Street where the project fronts. There are a number of improvements there that we will see. And that is part of a Gardner Creek Crossing Street ULID Utility Local Improvement District financing. So there's some culvert improvements and road improvements there along the frontage. And if that ULID does not pass, then the applicant is required to construct those improvements, which is typical. Every project will improve their frontage. Let's see. The other items are, there's a lot of detail in this concurrency related to occupancy, when things are required, again, because it's such a large project and there's a lot of improvements that will occur. So we do have some temporary traffic measures that the applicant would be required to do if necessary. We also have a roundabout that the city is looking at. It's at the intersection of Northwest 8th Street, Way, North Bend Way. I don't have any specifics or any exhibits specific to these detailed here again, because that wasn't the subject matter of this, but I'm happy to provide and let the applicant is very well aware as is other staff here about all these mitigation measures if we want to talk about it further.
And one thing I saw in a recommended condition regarding impact fees. Transportation impact fees are based on an actual user of the facility. So a doctor's office is different than a super busy, another use that would be really, really busy, and they may have a higher rating and have to pay higher impact fees. So is staff recommending a baseline with an addition in case the use exceeds the number for that baseline
Yes.
on how to calculate
Yes.
transportation impact fees?
We have, because the applicant does not have an end user and the occupancy isn't known, we have agreed to that in currency. And then when the building permits are issued and the land use category is determined, the applicant will pay the difference of those traffic impact fees that are at the current rate in effect at that time. Another question was about the entrance. The only entrance that the traffic evaluation is looking at is the Northwest 8th Street. Again, with those improvements in place, which are essential. I think that's all I had to add. Did you have anything to add on the environmental?
What about the stacking thing?
Right, the building height?
If a developer felt they could do a whole lot of things if they built taller than 35 feet, is height something in this area for which they could request a variance?
So the same variance criteria in North Bend Municipal Code 1826 would apply, which was considered as part of this. So it would go through a similar process with the hearing examiner. All the other criteria are the same. And from the city's perspective, what we have heard from citizens and the council and mayor have been opposed to having really tall buildings for views. And 35 feet is the limit. There's a small area downtown where you can go up to 45, but height has been a pretty hot topic for us as a city, really wanting to maintain that. And like the applicant said, it doesn't really work for their use.
You mean so they could see things like that?
Right.
Okay. Anything else from you? All right. Anything else, Mr. Gray?
I was just gonna offer one thing. Question of the net gain of ecological functions is based on a conceptual mitigation plan. And one of the conditions is approval of a final mitigation plan. So just for general awareness, if there's a question of what that includes, you know, there's a final grading plan, there's hydrographs with groundwater data. There's restoration plantings, what the protection will look like. There's a final impacts assessment. There will be a 10-year monitoring requirement, as the applicant stated. A performance bond and the native growth protection easement would all need to be completed. And the approval is also contingent on the approval of the certified letter of map revision that eliminated the 5.4 acres of buffer clearing during the initial application review. So as long as all that happens, then the final mitigation plan, you know, can move forward. So wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Thank you. All right, back to Ms. Rogers. Does that conclude staff's presentation? Okay, all right. Ms. Rogers.
Because he just raised it, I would like to hear from Mr. Belmary. I'm making up a new name for you, Dan. Mr. Belmelli, the status of the Clomar letter. Could you describe that to the examiner?
There's a requirement of the project to process a Clomar F as a first step of the development to do any grading activities, and then followed by that a LOMAR, which is a final map amendment. Clomar stands for Conditional Letter of Map Amendment for fill. And so we have prepared that first application, which is the Clomar F. And as part of that, we have to get the city administrator to sign one of the documents, which we have submitted to the city. As soon as we get that back, we'll be submitting to FEMA for that first step in the Clomar F process. And then once that's received, the second part is, like I
This is
said,
about the floodplain mapping.
yes, it's the floodplain. It's the revision to the floodplain mapping. Yes. Second part is the LOMAR, and that's the final map amendment. That's required to be done prior to any occupancy of the building. So we'll be staying on top of that second one too. So any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay.
Appreciate you clarifying that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I have nothing further except to obviously ask for your support for the variance, and we'll be providing you, like I said, the additional closing argument by September 6th.
And if you would please indicate if the request for consultation has any bearing, you believe or not, on my decision, and if it needs to await anything that might be coming about, or if any sort of consultation or communications have occurred or will occur before you submit something. And if you want to submit anything updating me on that, that's fine too, because it may all be concluded in some fashion. I do not know, but I just want you to know that if you have a chance to update me on that, that would be very helpful. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, with that, if staff has nothing else, all right, the record will be held open for receipt of a closing statement from the applicant team. Staff, you will have an opportunity to review that, and then if you would, within a business day, let me know if staff wants to respond, and if you do, how much time you'll need, and I'll communicate electronically to let you know how much time. And September 6th is the deadline for the applicant to submit that. If for some reason something comes up and you need an extension, let me know. I could grant that if for good cause. And so the record is open until receipt of those instruments. And once I receive those exhibits, I will declare the record closed, and I will move forward with writing a written decision, which will be transmitted to staff in PDF form. And the weeks following closing the record sometime in September would be my hope. And it will be posted on the city's website and anybody that is a party, if you've provided your email or you spoke today, make sure they have your email. You'll be informed that the decision is out. Okay. I want to thank you all for your participation today, and very good information, good questions from everybody. And thank you all for taking the time to follow up on people's requests for information. All right. With that, we're adjourned. Have a good afternoon.